let the hostage go, let go of the doctrine, come on out and talk to us. We're not here to hurt you.
Welcome to the Unitarian Christian Alliance podcast, episode 32, Negotiating with Trinitarians, with guest John Lawson. I'm Mark Kane. Today is a thoroughly practical episode. It's not particularly easy being a Unitarian Christian, that is, a Christian who believes in a God who is quite distinctly one, not compoundedly one, not metaphysically or incomprehensibly one, just simply one. And it's not particularly easy trying to explain what it is that we believe. Most don't want to hear it. It's easier to take other people's word for it, to already know in advance that those who deny the deity of Christ aren't even Christians. This is a common teaching which creates a kind of mental gridlock, a grinding and lurching conversation, which seems to make more noise than progress. It's not particularly easy being called a heretic and losing friends, especially when the reason you are parting ways is something as horrible as a conviction of scriptural truth. Now, maybe, we would understand some nasty treatment if, say, we were stealing money from the offering each week, or abusing children, or sleeping with other people's spouses. That makes sense. But all those things, you see, are simply sins. Denying the Trinitarian formulation is a special kind of bad. It's sometimes seen as a malicious, dark intent to destroy other people's faith. You and I have been visiting now for 32 episodes. You've gotten to know me and my amazing guests. Even if you disagree with how we interpret Scripture, I suspect you may have noticed a lack of blind obedience to leaders, a notable tendency to speak up when things don't seem right, and a willingness to pay a costly price for what we believe is true. If you don't respect our theology, maybe you can respect us as people. I've met plenty of outcast Unitarian Christians. I know that if I had to form a team of dedicated, focused individuals, willing to withstand slings and arrows, able to take a punch and get back up, to be mocked publicly, and press on regardless, I would be honored to fill my team with these people. I am honored to be considered among their ranks. It's not particularly easy, no, but we keep at it. Today is a thoroughly practical episode. John Lawson has learned a few things through his struggles to teach and share the truth, things which really make sense, and which could possibly open up some new possibilities in your witness. And don't worry, we're not going to hurt you. John Lawson, it is a pleasure to speak with you today.
Hello, how you doing?
Great. Why don't we start with a little bit about your background, because that'll explain what we're going to be talking about.
All right. I have grown up going to church. I started off as a Catholic, and I went from being a Catholic to diving into a little bit of Baptists. And then from there, I went straight into a church that's non-denom.
Okay.
I was a non-denom, Pentecostal, Christian, filled with the Spirit, as they say, and I was all for it.
Okay. Now, you're fairly young, so this all happened during about what age range?
I was a junior in college, and I was a late bloomer, so I think I was around 23, 24.
Okay.
So I was going to this church, and I listened to the pastor, and I know that this is a Christian man, and he leads a church, and I trust everything he says. And there are times we sat down with my mentor, did Bible studies, and he would show a verse to me, and I would just be like, okay, but what does that one verse mean in the context of the chapter? And I didn't know I was practicing exegesis at the time. So.
Yes.
2.5 years down the road in this church, I felt like God was showing me it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to test all things. So the more questions I asked, the more I realized I didn't really fit in with the church. I had lots of questions, and people were saying, if you don't like what we say or you don't like what we teach, you can leave. And that kind of hurt because to me, they were like a family.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. When you don't have a church to tell you what to think, if you don't have a pastor to tell you what to think, and you suddenly are able to read the Bible for yourself and ask questions that aren't forbidden, you end up going down some very interesting little side paths, and you start to really grow. I remember asking the Father, well, now that I know what's not true, could you please at least show me what is true? Because it felt like I kept running into things that were not real. I was walking through a theme park, and I thought I was in the real world, like a Truman Show. I had this moment where I was like, wait, that's a cardboard cutout store. That's not real. That's just painted on.
Yeah.
So I had these moments of like, okay, if none of this is real, then what is real? I felt like God was telling me in the Bible, when did I ever say, your faith is simply just to go to church on Sunday, sit in a pew, and listen to someone? That's Christianity. I says, well, no, that's not in the Bible. And I just had this dumb moment, like, why would I do something that's not even found in the Bible? I said, well, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, what is truth? And that was like the huge, huge moment where, God could have gave me the truth and on a platter when I was 10 years old and said, here you go. But instead, his sovereignty, his providence, he says, I'm going to wait till you ask me, what is the truth? And suddenly, like, the floodgates opened. Things came up in my life from social media or personal conversations, people at work. Everywhere I went, it was like truth was coming to me now. He was showing me that your law is truth, Psalm 119, 142. And why do I bring that up in this conversation? Is because that was the beginning of me saying, all right, I have this huge whiteboard in my head of all these beliefs I have in Christendom.
Yeah.
And I'm about to take the eraser, clean it all off, and be like, tell me from the beginning what's true, what's biblical. I realized that a lot of Trinitarians have so many presuppositions, things written on their whiteboard with a permanent marker, and it's like, we're not going to erase this.
Yeah.
With that attitude, it's almost impossible to test the Trinity, because it's like trying to take an engine out of a car, but you refuse to remove any bolts. It just ain't going to happen.
It's a good analogy.
You got to ask yourself, am I willing to remove anything and everything if the Father and the Scriptures tell me to do so? It will hurt sometimes. It'll be hard to swallow sometimes, but what I want is the truth.
You're describing a level of a comfort with discomfort, I think is what I'm trying to say. That this path was ultimately going to end up better, even though at the moment it didn't feel that way at all.
Yeah, it almost felt like, a good example is birth. A childbirth is so beautiful, obviously. I hear about it all the time. I've never actually got to witness it yet, but I hope to see it one day. And but at the same time, I've heard that it's a very raw and such a sobering moment. I mean, you have a human being birthed, and it's not some clean and Hollywood scene, it's raw. I mean, there's a little bit of chaos, And I feel like when I came out of that theme park, and I suddenly stepped out into the real world, it was like, okay, this is what a real tree looks like. Okay. Like this thing organically grew right here.
Yeah.
And in one of your podcasts, you said something that was so encouraging to me. To really understand the Unitarian faith, you got to understand the Jewish faith. It's kind of where the Father took me. He took me to the Torah. And from the Torah, I started keeping the Sabbath and eating kosher and keeping the feasts. Once I did all that, I felt like I hit a little plateau, but I was happy because I don't know about you, but when you grow a lot in a short amount of time, you're okay with a little bit of normal once in a while. So I plateaued for a bit.
Okay.
And then through God's sovereignty, he introduces me to a friend. In the Torah movement, we call Jesus Yeshua. And I'm talking about Yeshua pre-existing this and being God, which we call Yahweh or Yehovah, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the Tetragrammaton. We'll just say Yahweh for this conversation.
Sure.
And he just says, yeah, I don't think Yeshua, Jesus, is Yahweh. And my ears perked up. It was like all my senses heightened. I suddenly was like, hold on. What did you just say? He says, I don't think Yeshua is Yahweh. I don't think Jesus is God. My old self in the Christendom would have been like, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and block you on Facebook, and that's it.
Yeah.
My new self, realizing that everything was perhaps man-made tradition and not biblically sound, I suddenly had to face another challenge. The very floor that I was standing on, like if you ever been in a house, the concrete floor, you don't think that part can be remodeled. You can remodel the kitchen, the cabinets, the toilet, whatever, but nobody says, let's replace the cement floor.
Yes.
The man looks at me and says, I don't believe the cement floor is the floor. And I thought, wow, the very floor I'm standing on is needing to be tested. The very God you've been praying to might not be who you think it is. It's scary.
Oh, yeah.
So I always had a hard time with the Trinity. But, of course, I thought that was the concrete floor of the house, and you don't just remove that. That stays.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, ain't nothing wrong with the floor. It's just something wrong with me. And so I shouldn't ask questions. When I was about 5 years old, I literally was already testing the Trinity. I was putting my shoes on, my little Velcro strap Power Ranger shoes on.
Yeah. And
my mom is helping me. I asked her a simple question as an innocent child. I said, Mom, is Jesus God? And, that's the stuff that 5-year-olds think about. And she says, no, he's not God. I says, okay, that makes sense because God is God and Jesus is Jesus. Okay. And my dad heard it down the hallway and he yells, Jesus is God. Don't be telling him nothing, this, and that.
Oh my goodness.
And I realized well, I agree with my mom, but I don't want to get in trouble with my dad, so I'll just stop talking. Looking back now, it's like that moment my friend said Yeshua is not Yahweh. I had this flashback of all the moments that I had a hard time with the Trinity. And I realized I've been struggling with the Trinity my whole life. And now I can actually test that too. There's no pastor that's going to condemn me. I don't go to a church these days on Sunday. I'm already a heretic to some people because I keep the Sabbath and I eat kosher. So I'm a free man. Let's test it out.
I often think about the sociology of faith and how some people would be entirely uncomfortable with poking at any aspect of their faith because to them, to use your analogy, they lived in that park for so long. What's outside the park, well, maybe it would be severely disappointing. Maybe it would be dangerous. Maybe this place is safe. Everybody here is nice. I mean, I got to go to Disney, and it's a magical kingdom, and they do it on purpose. It really is pleasant. Look, there's food at every corner. There's smiling employees. Why would you want to leave? Why was it you could do that? Or what was it that...
Well, I don't want people to take it as, you just want to be a rebel. And if the Trinitarian view is the popular view, you just want to go against it. No, if it was the first century view, then I would be all for it. But I cannot help myself but to listen to guys like Sean Finnegan, who's a scholar, who breaks it down and says, you don't see the Trinity until the 4th century. I'm like, okay, then. I think I'd be much happier with whatever was in the 1st century. Whatever that may be, it's not the Trinity. And it just so happens to be that the closest thing possible of a 1st century church Christology is the Unitarian faith. It's very Hebrew, and I love it when Bill Schlegel says, in order to see the truth on Yeshua, you have to look at it through the lens of the Hebrew faith. How does the Hebrew faith view agency? Mark, you used this in your episode 31, Shaliach, the Shaliach and the agent of God the Father, of Yahweh. I mean, that is Hebrew 101. That's Christianity 101.
Yeah.
And I want that. So that's where it led me. It led me to the Unitarian faith. Next thing you know, I'm sitting here now between two places. It's interesting because many of the Torah observant people are either Trinitarian or modalist. And so they don't like me because, even though I'm Torah observant, I reject the Messiah's deity as God.
Yeah.
And then over here, I hang out with the Christian Unitarians, and they're like, we don't like you because you say Yeshua instead of Jesus, and you think you're better because you eat kosher or something. I'm like, okay. So I'm in between,
Yeah. Isn't it funny how we end up in those spots? I mean,
Yeah, I'm very good at it.
So how long ago was it when you discovered the Unitarian view?
I first discovered, I don't like to say I discovered, because I do believe that God is showing me these things. Without him, I wouldn't have even known who the Messiah is to begin with. So what I like to say is when the Father showed me, he first showed me the Torah and the Hebrew perspective of Scripture. And then a year after the Torah, he showed me the Unitarian faith, which is, I believe, part of the Torah. It's the Shema, the greatest commandment. The Lord your God is one. I'd say I became a Unitarian about 5 years ago.
Okay.
From that point on, I was going through a stage of learning, obviously, and starving for the answers to John 1, John 5, John 10, and to be able to defend it. So I was going up on websites like biblicalunitarian.com, and I was listening to guys like Sean Finnegan, and to me, it was like living off of sugary food my whole life, and suddenly someone gives me a steak and some potatoes, and I was so thankful. I was just eating it all up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what I would advise everyone out there who may be testing this out, maybe you just became a Unitarian a few months ago, maybe you're in a transition period, I would say the first year, you should maybe get really good at knowing what you believe and knowing what the Trinitarian believes and knowing the different languages and wordings they use. I almost call it the stage cage period.
Wait, stage cage or cage stage?
Stage cage. I call it stage cage. But if it's cage stage, I think that sounds a lot more English proper. Let's call it cage stage.
Okay.
So the cage stage to me is a stage in your faith where you've perhaps learned something new or you've grown to a new level in your faith. And although it's matured you in one area, it's like giving a baby a shotgun. It's too much power for that first year to really know what to do with it, that knowledge or that wisdom.
Yeah.
And so you want to be put in a cage and just stay in the cage and learn and listen and observe before you go out into the world, before you go into your local Baptist churches, before you go up to your best friend who's a hardcore Trinitarian, before you do any of that, before you go on Facebook and start posting a bunch of memes, just wait a year to let the wounds heal. Because to be honest with you, when your Trinitarian theology is completely ripped out and replaced by the Unitarian faith, it takes time to grow. And also, I do believe there's a time of healing. There's several stages of healing. When I first became a Unitarian, there was some grieving because I am now no longer seen as saved by a lot of the people that I thought were my brothers in Christ. And I'm saying goodbye to an old way of living. It'll never be the same.
Yeah. I guess you're saying this because during your first year, you were not in a cage. Is that right?
Yeah. For several years there, I'm trying to tell people about the Unitarian faith, kind of like an evangelist tries to tell the gospel to a bunch of people, and he just gets a lot of pushback. They shut the door in his face. So I was frustrated, and I started to pray, and I asked the Father, if I have this truth that you've given me, and no one's listening, what am I supposed to do with it? Am I supposed to just be one of these guys that kind of keeps it to himself? I want to hear the words, good work, my good and faithful servant, when I resurrect.
Yeah.
So I thought, Father, please use me and show me how to represent you the best way possible. I want to be like the Messiah. Not too long after, my friend who's Unitarian says, read this book, and it's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, V-O-S-S.
Okay.
He was a retired hostage negotiator. His whole book breaks down the idea of how the mind works and how to deal with someone who's in a tough or emotional or hostile situation and being able to talk them down and tell them it's okay, you can come out the bank now, no one's going to hurt you. Well, everyone's mental mind is almost reacting the same way. They're sitting there and they're holding their Trinitarian doctrine like a hostage. That's his everything, his bread and butter. That's what makes him powerful and be able to say, I want a plane and $1 million in a suitcase. And all I'm telling him is, let the hostage go, let go of the doctrine, come on out and talk to us. We're not here to hurt you. The book pretty much breaks down this idea that the mind is emotional. I know we don't like to think that way. We want to walk around saying we're very logical, sound-minded people that aren't led by emotion.
Right.
But the truth is, we are emotional creatures. So you have to acknowledge that when you go up to someone and you present to them, hey, I don't believe Jesus is God, don't be surprised that all the red alarms and red flags just went off in their head and they're in fight or flight mode right now.
Yeah.
And so you should maybe take the time to let them talk. Just listen. They'll say, what about John 1? What about John 5? Actually give them what they want to hear. Tell them, oh yes, so as a Trinitarian, you believe that Jesus is the Word made flesh in John 1, and you believe he's fully God and fully man with the hypostatic union. And you believe that he's eternally begotten from eternity. And tell them their belief so that they can feel heard. A lot of times I feel like, and this is what the book talks about, people don't feel like you're listening. You're just hearing what they're saying, but you already have a response. So you're just waiting them to finish talking so you can rebuttal them.
Yes.
And it turns into a huge sword fight.
Yes.
But the point is, every person has an audible voice and an internal voice in their mind that's telling them what to think, what you heard, what you said.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone comes up to you and says, the Trinity is biblical, and the internal voice in your head says, he thinks you're a heretic. You should prove him wrong. And your audible voice attacks and says, yeah, so what? You think Jesus is God. So, and then suddenly it turns into a theological fistfight.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want. You want the Mark Cain approach, very laid back approach. You want to calm down the listener because they're right now a hostage holder. They're very heightened on their fight or flight. They got their finger on the trigger and they're ready to fight. The first thing you do is use your podcast, DJ, FM voice. Calm down.
Calm down.
You don't want to use your Trinitarians or heretics voice. It doesn't work. I've tried it. You calm down the situation and people usually return what they see. If they see you're calm, you have a smile, they usually calm down too. They're like, okay, he's not here to hurt me. He's very calm. Okay. And that's what Chris Voss in the book is talking about. Gets on the phone with these hostage holders in the bank or whatever and says, hey, bud, how you doing today? Can I get you something to eat or whatever? Just a calm voice. And the next thing he does is he lets them talk. One of the things he says is, though the intensity may differ from person to person, you can be sure that everyone you meet is driven by two primal urges. One is the need to feel safe and secure, and second is the need to feel in control. If you satisfy those drives, you're in the door. And people want to feel understood. One of the situations that Chris Voss breaks down, he has a bunch of his hostage situations that he explains, but one of them was this guy who was very anti-government. The government is why he is the way he is, Chris Voss didn't agree with anything he was saying. He didn't believe in his politics or his point of view in life. But what he did is he regurgitated and said, what I hear you saying is, and he went off and explained everything he said. And this gang member was like, that's right. A couple hours later, he's releasing hostages. Chris Voss gets an email from this guy somehow years later and says, I still don't know to this day how you got it, but I was so ready to kill every hostage in that building just to make it on the news and prove my point. And I was not planning on letting those people live. I still, to this day, don't know what you did. And I just want to let you know I'm still thinking about that.
Wow.
I don't know why criminals email. But bottom line is, it really was eye-opening because I said, if Chris Voss can get this terrorist to release hostages over a phone call, then my goodness, I think I can at least talk to Trinitarians without them hanging up on me. And I started to try to implement his way of doing things.
Yeah.
One of my first Trinitarian friends that I talked to was a Trinitarian Catholic. You can't get more Trinitarian than that. And he's hardcore Catholic. I mean, loves the Eucharist, the Catholic Church, and so on.
Yeah.
Every conversation I ever had with him always ended up with us both frustrated and not wanting to talk to each other after 20 minutes. This time around, I said, let me use the Chris Voss way of thinking.
Okay.
I spoke calmly to him. I was patient, kind, And I said to him, so what you believe is that the Trinity is this, 3 persons in one being, and that they're all fully God, co-eternal, coexistent. You believe that Jesus is the Son of God and that he's eternally begotten, and so on. I went on and on and on. And I never heard the man's voice change like this before, but he went from fight or flight to saying, that's right. So what do you believe again? And I said, oh my goodness, did you just ask me what I believed? Usually you're interrupting me and you know.
Yeah.
And I said, it works. This guy Chris knows what he's talking about.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so this book really helped, and it's really helped me understand how the human mind works, that it's an emotional thing that thinks with an internal voice and external voice. Think about it. You got 2 people, me and this Trinitarian. I have my audio voice and my internal voice. Then this Trinitarian has his audible voice and his internal voice. So you have 3, no, I can't count 3, the Trinity. You have 4, you have 4 voices going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Chris Voss says, if you want to be good at this, you got to turn off your internal and external voice and just let them talk. Turn everything off and just be an empty vessel and listen. I says, wow, I remember praying not too long ago about being a good listener, because I always thought everyone knows how to talk, but no one knows how to listen. Father's answering my prayer through this man by teaching me how to listen, teaching me how to speak, and so on. So if anybody has the time, buy the audiobook or whatever, check it out, because it's really helped me become a better Unitarian, a better Christian, a better representative of the Messiah.
Yeah.
I suddenly am representing more of the fruits of the Spirit: patience, kindness, self-control, slow to anger, quick to forgive, Corinthians 13 kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because you have a YouTube channel, which I want to make sure we touch upon, where you have a video where you're explaining something. It's a one-way channel. You're not really hearing another person talk when you put together a short video in your YouTube channel. So I'm interested in how that works for you, given what you're describing now.
When I first was shown the Unitarian faith, I obviously wanted people to look into it themselves. But with me, I didn't even know you could look into it. I didn't know you could test the Trinity. I didn't think there was alternate options until someone said, hey, have you tested the Trinity yet? So what I try to do with my videos that are only about 3 minutes long is I try to just put a little thought in their head of, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to look into this one verse. It's okay to test this doctrine. I tested it out. I have friends who test it out. There's teachers out there that are very scholarly. And I have a 3-minute short video. I don't expect it to completely change people's lives in 3 minutes, but I do believe that a spark could start a forest fire. So I just put out a bunch of sparks out there, and if the Holy Spirit wants to use these sparks, he can turn it into a nice little burning bush that turns into a burning forest. I'm just trying to put little seeds out there. And if it lands on good soil, it'll produce fruit.
Okay.
I don't want to attack Trinitarians. And if I am, I try to correct it. Because what I want to do is let the Holy Spirit do the work.
Right.
And so if the Trinitarians are out there listening, I want them to have a civil, respectful conversation with us. And I want to let them know we're not here to fight. You can come out the bank. We're not going to shoot you up. We just want to talk. That's it. If we walk away saying, yep, you're wrong, I'm right, I'd be like, okay, but thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah.
Time is precious, and I appreciate you being respectful, and I was respectful to you.
Yeah.
Hopefully down the road, we'll talk again. That's all I'm trying to do.
Okay. Well, that's good. What's the name of your YouTube channel?
It's just my name, John Lawson.
Okay.
JOHN LAWSON.
I'll put a link to that so somebody wants to see your videos. I love that there's more and more people popping up making content like this. My hope one day is that anybody who searches for a particular Bible verse doesn't get 500 Trinitarian answers and one non-Trinitarian answer, because already that looks like, well, clearly these people must be wrong because, just one guy out in the woods? Is this like John the Baptist saying something different than everybody else is saying? I'm not so sure about that. But no, what you do and others, it's balancing out the imbalance.
I guess for me, it's like if there was one street avenue and on that street avenue, someone's just walking down it and I have some samples of strawberries, my little produce shop.
Mm-hmm.
And a person takes one little bite and they're like, that's the best strawberries I've ever had. I'm very interested in having more of that. I'd be like, there's more in the store. You can buy a whole pound of strawberries if you want. If you don't, that's fine. And if you want to come back later. But just know that if you ever want our strawberries, this is where you get it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I do with my videos. I'm like, here's a taste of it.
Yeah.
If you like what it is, check out more videos. Or I always recommend these longer videos that are more thorough, like Sean Finnegan or Bill Schleigel.
Yeah.
My videos are not meant to be like very deep, very basic.
Yeah, that's okay. I appreciate it. I've watched a few already, and I thought, yeah, this is nicely done, simple, clear, and they're just like you said. They are introductions to an idea. That's what happens here in these podcasts too. I can't delve down every little rabbit hole in every single discussion about every topic that comes up, but it's enough that people know these topics exist, and they hear it in a relaxed way, and they're like, oh, I'm going to look that up later. I'll think about that.
Yeah, when I first heard about the Unitarian faith, I didn't know where to go. I just went to my friend and asked him 100 questions, but then he told me about biblicalunitarian.com.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is great, but then that's all I knew was biblicalunitarian.com with John Schoenheit. Next thing you know, I'm hearing other names, and I'm like, there's others out there? Wow, there's an entire library of scholars that are teaching this stuff, and they have hours of content on podcasts and YouTube and Facebook and articles. And it was like, I want others to be able to find these guys and not take as long to find them as I did. So, I wanted to also say that while listening to your episode 31, where Brandon Duke was interviewing you, so much that you said I took and was like, this is wisdom, this is knowledge, and this is an perfect example of maybe how we Unitarians should start looking at this. I myself have caught myself being in the fight or flight mode, where someone tries to call out the Unitarian faith and say that it's heresy or something, and my fight or flight kicks in and I want to combat with them and argue. But you said something at episode 31 that was so helpful. God is in control, and he'll explain everything to us one day, and we'll have the truth. Until that day comes and he gives us all the truth, let's just share our ideas, chew on it, think about it. You tell me what you believe, I'll tell you what I believe. And we shouldn't take things so serious where we want to label everyone a Satan worshiper, as you said.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, if everybody was as laid back and friendly as Mark Cain, I think we'd be a lot more enjoyable to have these conversations. So I really enjoyed that episode of yours.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, John, I've really enjoyed this time, this chance to talk. I wish you well, and I'll be following along with your channel, see how it's coming.
I definitely have subscribed to your podcast on YouTube, and I'm enjoying all of the episodes. And I always recommend anyone out there who hasn't seen it yet that the UCA podcast is great to listen to on your way to work, on your way home. And I'm very excited to be friends with you, Mark, and I look forward to seeing what God has in store for us.
I appreciate it. Thank you, John. Very cool. At the end there, John mentioned listening to my podcast on YouTube. Did that strike you as odd? In fact, I do publish these episodes to a YouTube channel, the Unitarian Christian Alliance podcast channel. If you're one of those folks who spend a lot of time in YouTube, you may enjoy listening to these podcasts there. It's not how I consume podcasts, but hey, as I always say, you can lead a gift horse to the water, but you can't make him drink spilt milk. But here's something I've been mulling over the last few weeks. Transcripts of these episodes. If you are hard of hearing, here's a tip. On the YouTube version of this episode, you can click the 3-dot menu in the corner and turn captions on. My words will appear on the screen as you listen. Now, it's automated captions. They're not always accurate. And also, the captions don't make it clear who is talking, me or my guest. But nonetheless, I think it may be helpful. I have a hard time fitting all the stuff I do into the waking hours of my day. I would like to have more accurate transcriptions for these episodes. And I do like the idea of better closed captioning. But I don't have the time right now. If you happen to be very comfortable with captioning videos and have some extra energy and would like to chat with me, I'm interested. Email me podcast at UnitarianChristianAlliance.org. So with the YouTube option that exists right now, you can find one way to get a bit of help if you're hearing impaired. Try it out, email me, and let me know what you think. I am excited for the next few episodes. So much goodness, I had to ask my guest to endure for 2 recordings, not 1. She was a good sport about it. I wish I would be able to have it ready for you next week, but I've got to finish a video treat and prep some content for the UCA conference. I'm the MC for the event, and I feel it my personal duty to you, the attendees, to make sure you are thoroughly welcomed, to have you smiling, and to ever so incrementally enhance what is already sure to be a time of wonderful fellowship.
Hello to everybody listening to the UCA podcast. This is Hector from Massachusetts. I am so excited for the first UCA conference. I'm that peasant that's constantly posting questions in the UCA Facebook group. So if you love my questions or hate my questions, love me or hate me, come say hi to me when we're there because I can't wait to meet you.
Hector, great to hear your voice. I will see you there. There are still tickets. Go to UnitarianChristianAlliance.org, click Conference in the navigation menu, and scroll through all the information. At the end of the page is the sign-up form. I've heard from a few of you that you are enjoying the extra email I send out with each episode. I recently started adding the links from each show's notes in the email for you. I hope that's proven helpful. A little more behind-the-scenes information. I write those emails on Tuesday night after I've completed and pushed out the show. I set the show to release 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time the next morning, and then I breathe a sigh of relief. I turn to my email, and I reflect on that week's episode. When you read my extra thoughts, now you know when I'm thinking them. Those moments when I'm releasing all the got to get it done pressure from my brain. If you are so inclined, there's a link in the show notes to sign up for the email. Just your first name and email is enough. What's the worst that could happen? You'll have one more email in your inbox? If you're like the rest of humanity, it's probably too late to fix that problem. John, thanks for the insights. I do expect they will be of help to many. Good luck on your YouTube channel. As a little taste, here's a few moments from one of them called The Son of God.
So what does it mean to be a son of God? First, it means you have a special relationship with the Father, an inheritance from the Father, to have a high rank among all creation. Adam was told to rule the earth. Solomon was made king of Israel. The nation of Israel was favored among all the nations. And Yeshua was chosen and set apart as the human Messiah and King. John 10, verse 36.
In his videos, John includes easy-to-follow animations and words. It's a light introduction to some of the ideas which have so thoroughly changed his world. If you know someone who is new to their Unitarian understanding, share this episode with them. It could really be an encouragement. I'll be back in a few weeks. May God bless you in your truth pursuits. I hope this podcast serves you well.